welcome back to the Charter Podcast, brought to you by St. Xavier University. I'm Ruthie Polinsky, alongside Clay Harbor, my co-host on the Big Pro Football Show on Chicago Sports Network, and we are here to talk more about the Chicago Bears. And Clay, I guess we'll start here because after having a few days to think about this game in Arizona, I am more disappointed by what happened in Arizona than I am in what happened in Washington. And I think it's obviously because we're looking at the response from the Fail Mary, as it's now been labeled. And it was just exactly what I think all Bears fans didn't want to see. They lacked energy from the get-go. They lacked effort throughout the whole game. They were unprepared. They didn't have a good game plan, and they had an opportunity to go up against one of the worst defenses in the NFL and try and fix some problems on offense, and they failed on all fronts. And it really, I think obviously that touchdown before the half is what really took the air out of the balloon, but I think they weren't in that game really from the start. And I think that's really what is so frustrating and disappointing, because it was an opportunity in front of them to get right after that Washington loss, and they couldn't capitalize on it. And I know a lot of Bears fans are sitting there and they're saying, man, same old Bears. Clay, what are your thoughts?
I think you have a right to be more angry about this game against the Cardinals than, the game against the Commanders, because against the Commanders, you saw some good things. There were some good things you could take from that game, like the Caleb Williams drive in the fourth quarter, 2 drives actually, coming down, scoring, defense playing well, bend but don't break defense. Looking at the film, when you're a player and a coach, you can take some really good things from that game, at least all the way up until the ending and how they handled that. So that was something that seemed fixable. It's like, okay, this was a good team we lost to, and we did do some good things. We should have won this game. We literally tried to hand the football to our backup left guard and center, and we literally gave up a Hail Mary. We had a player talking to the crowd 4 seconds into a play, and we still should have won. So you could take some things from that game and say, we did this well. Defense, great job, bend but don't break. Offense, you guys had a tough 2-3 quarters, but you made plays when it counted. Okay, and that's how I looked at it. So moving forward to this game, this Cardinals debacle, there's nothing either side of the ball can take from that game. There's nothing offensively. You didn't run the ball well. You didn't throw the ball well. You had drops from the receivers. Caleb was late on throws. He's trying to hit triples and doubles when sometimes just hit a check down, hit the single. Ruthie, hit the drag bunt. Sometimes you can leg out a drag bunt. I know you like baseball. You take the check down there, okay? And then you're just doing things that aren't like you. You're supposed to be an accurate passer. You're missing guys. And then the offensive line, Ruthie. This is a defensive line they're going up against. That was one of the worst in the league. They had 6 sacks in their previous 5 games. They had 6 sacks against the Bears. So there was nothing good you could take from that game. And that's why it is even more upsetting to me, because you think this team is on a trajectory and heading somewhere. I can take a last-minute blow and take a 4-quarter beatdown from all phases of the game.
Yeah, and you mentioned the offensive line, so I guess that's kind of a good transition, and that's obviously a position that's getting banged up, right? Braxton Jones, Darnell Wright. Help me out here. It feels like it's a musical chairs every week of who's going to be in and who's going to be out. Braxton Jones seemingly going to be out again this week. He was a DNP today. Darnell Wright, I believe I have the injury report right here. He was also a DNP today. So there are some issues there, and it doesn't really feel like there's a ton of solutions. Karana Magaji, we saw him come in the Washington game. He wasn't ready for that moment, and now he's hurt, so you don't even have him. It's just getting very thin there. So they've got to have some answers when it comes to protecting your number 1 overall pick, and that's something that they really struggled with in that game against Arizona. And obviously this is a quarterback that's, you're forgetting he's played 8 games in the NFL, but he's still learning what it means to be an NFL quarterback. And I think to help him, you need to give him time. And obviously he's not going to be the quickest at getting the ball out every single play because he's learning the NFL, right? So you have to provide opportunities for him to make mistakes and take a little bit longer to find his reads. And those are things that I just feel like he's not getting when the offensive line is broken at this point. And that to me is kind of, what's so frustrating about, we talked all offseason about all the weapons and all the pieces that you're putting around Caleb Williams, when the most important piece might be his protection, because he needs to stay upright. And the only way he's going to do that is if you find good people to surround him with. And I mean, literally surround him with in the pocket, not just like, people to throw to and hand the ball off to. So I think that's kind of what's been a little, when you look at how you want the second half of the season to go here, and you need to see an upward trajectory fast, when you have this offensive line, I just don't see how that's possible.
Yeah. So there's a couple things there, Ruthie. And one was, I'm a little surprised they didn't make at least some sort of a move on when they know that Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright are going to be out during the trade deadline, just to get some depth. Like you saw what the Vikings did. The Vikings are telling their players, hey, we're in this. We're going to go out and we're going to get Cam Robinson. We know Christian Darrisaw is a great left tackle. We're going to get a guy that we can plug in that has played some football. We're not going to throw in some practice squad player and just pray and hope for the best and see what happens. That's a team that went out there and said to their team, we're ready to win now. To me, the Bears not addressing D-line, too. I'm sure we're going to talk about Big Bill, Andrew Billings being out for the season probably now with the pec surgery, going to get a defensive tackle, a nose tackle, someone to plug in for Big Bill, someone to plug in for one of these offensive tackles to add more depth. And you didn't see that. So to me, that was kind of telling maybe of where the Bears see this season going. They don't want to give up a little bit of that draft capital to maybe get somebody that's willing to come in here and play right away. But the second thing to this is you're going to have to change your game plan, right? Shane Waldron's game plans didn't work when he had his full starting lineup. So I'm not sure they'll work when he doesn't. So I remember back when I was in New England, you covered New England. I played there in 2016, and it was during the Deflategate debacle. We'll talk about that. Tom Brady was sidelined, and we had Jimmy Garoppolo as our starting quarterback. And then Jacoby Brissett, a rookie at the time, had to come in and play for us. And I remember we're in the meeting rooms and Bill Belichick saying, and Josh McDaniels, our offensive coordinator, Brian Dable, my tight end coach, pretty loaded roster there of coaches, saying there is a path to victory this week, but it's a small path because we are going to have to do some different things. We're going to change up our game plan. We're going to give you guys a really tight game plan. We're going to protect some positions. Then it happened to be we're protecting our quarterback. We'd never run out. Do you think option was in the game plan when Tom Brady was at quarterback? Zone read was in the game plan when Tom Brady was at quarterback? No. We put that stuff in. Jacoby was younger then. He doesn't run so much anymore. But back then he ran a little bit. He's a guy that could do some zone read. He could do some option stuff. So you change for what you have. The New England Patriots were really good at putting players in a position to be successful. And that's what I don't see the Bears doing right now. You can't run a 5-step drop back at the end of a ball game with your third string tackle in while your starting quarterback's still in the game and expect it to get blocked and not expect him to get hit or to get injured. You saw he got a little rolled up, Caleb, at the end of that game. So to me, there's a path, but you're going to have to do a lot of movement stuff. You're going to have to run the ball side to side. You're going to have to do some counter O, some power O, some trade. You're going to have to run some different plays to protect these positions since you don't have your starters in there. So there's going to be a path to success and a path to victory. This isn't the 85 Bears they're playing against this week. Hopefully this game you can do certain things to protect your offensive line in this case. Give them a little bit more time, get some movement, get some rollouts going, maybe a little play action will help, but protect those positions and come out with a victory against a team that if the draft was today, Ruthie, would be picking number one in the NFL draft. That means they're the worst team in the NFL as far as record-wise of all the tiebreakers. So you got it. There's a path to win this game. Shane Waldron's got to figure that out offensively.
Yeah, this isn't the 85 Bears. It's also not the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady Patriots anymore. So it's good. As you mentioned, I mean, this is probably one of the least talented rosters in the NFL that's coming to town right now. Obviously, the quarterback's been playing well, but there's just not a lot of skill that's on this Patriots roster right now in a rebuild, and this should be an opportunity at home, which we know they've been wonderful at home. They've struggled on the road, and this should be an opportunity to again get right, which is what everyone I think felt like last week should have been. So I think there's obviously some hesitance going into this one. You just don't really know what to expect. You don't know what this Bears team is going to look like, and that's I think pretty frustrating. At this point in the season. I want to talk about the DJ Moore play that has gotten a lot of traction over the last couple of days. There's one of the plays, Caleb scrambling, and DJ Moore simply just runs out of bounds and he turns his back on the play and he goes and he sits down on the bench. And DJ was while the play is still going on, by the way. And it almost is a little reminiscent. I know obviously the stakes were much lower, but it's reminiscent of, I think, what happened in Washington with Tyreek Stevenson and a player not, for all intents and purposes, giving up on a play. I think that's what it looked like from the outside. DJ Moore addressed it today. And he said that he rolled his ankle and he was hurt. And so he took himself out. Make of it what you will, right? And I think all we can do right now is take DJ's word for it. Regardless, I think it would have shown a little more, it would have been less controversial if he would have maybe turned around and just watched to see how the play developed rather than just going and sitting down on the bench. I mean, that's your team. And, I would like to think that you would like for the team to have success, even if you're hurt. So I'm curious, Clay, what you think. I know you have some experiences about when you step out of bounds, you were taught to take yourself out of the play. DJ Moore essentially could have come back in though, Clay, right, and blocked for Caleb, who was scrambling at the time.
Yeah, so there's a couple different levels to this thing, and I'm going to start with this. So since that's the last thing you mentioned, is yes, if you step out of bounds, there is a rule in the NFL. In college, you can reestablish as an offensive player and catch a football. In the NFL, you step out of bounds, you cannot reestablish and catch a football unless you are forced out by a defensive player. Okay, then if you get fouled out, at least you can be forced out. If you get fouled out of bounds, you can step back in. That's the only way. He didn't get fouled out. He stepped out. So some coaches tell you lay down, you're dead, in the play. You don't want to muddy up the read. But there's still someone saying, hey, you can stay around, you can block for somebody, do something. To me, I've been in that position before. It just didn't feel right to fall down or to go out and stay on the sideline. So I would stay in and do something, try to grab a block, maybe pick somebody, figure out something to do, find work, so to speak, is what my coach always used to say. This looked bad for DJ, and not just the fact that he went out to play. Like you said, if you step out of bounds and then you turn around and you're like, dang, I'm out, and you're just watching the play. One thing, if you roll your ankle, you grab your ankle, maybe you fall to the ground, that's also another thing. If you run out of bounds, walk to the bench while the play is going on, mind you, you're walking to the bench, back turned, the play is still, I have never seen anything like that. Turn and sit on the bench, and then you're back in the game. That's insane. Okay, he says his ankle, he rolled his ankle. I know he didn't miss any snaps, and we got word because he is a professional. But to me, that looked even worse than the Tyreek Stevenson Hail Mary. Because Tyreek Stevenson is just being a dumb, cocky at the time. We've all been there, young, whatever. Just, hey, yeah, we won. He's kind of in the moment. We did this. Yeah. Kind of hyped up. He just made a dumb move. Just did something that was just terrible, and it cost his team. But in the moment, he did that because he got caught up in the moment. He thought the game was over, and I can fix that. That's not you not showing effort, giving up on something. That's you just being dumb in the moment. DJ Moore, what it looked like to me from the outside, I know he wrote, what it looked like to me was he gave up on the play and he was extremely frustrated because maybe he hasn't been getting a lot of targets and good targets, so to speak. So that's a tough play to really dissect because there's so many levels to it and with the injury. But to me, it looked even worse than the Tyreek Stevenson Hail Mary.
And I think it's interesting, right? Because Tyreek Stevenson, you're a young player. It's your second year in the league, and you're in a situation where it's a Hail Mary. The probability of that succeeding is so low. For a young player to have to learn, okay, the game isn't over until it's over is one thing. But DJ Moore, like, you're a max contract guy. Like, you're a vet. Like, you're setting an example for people. Like, you've established yourself as a great teammate, a great player, and to kind of, and this isn't the first time that I think he's been criticized for his body language this year in particular. So I think there's just a lot to read in there. All we can do is take DJ's word for it that it was rolled ankle, he was in pain, and he went to the bench. But it's definitely something I think that everyone's keeping their eye on right now because something just doesn't feel right. Something's not clicking between Caleb and DJ. And I think that's something that people are almost looking for at this point. So when that's happening and DJ Moore takes himself out of the play, then it's just more evidence, I think, of what people have some suspicions for right now. Let's move on a little bit. You touched on the Big Bill news. Going to have pec surgery, which I think was the fear.
Yeah.
And Matty Eberflus didn't say today that he is out for the year, but I think that we all know we all know what that means. So that's huge because that, and a lot of, I think TJ Edwards this week called him like he's the anchor of our defense. And especially when it comes to the run defense, which is not good. And you saw what happened in Arizona. Clay, how do they fill that hole? That big hole that Big Bill is leaving behind.
Big Bill, big dollar bill, man. And people might look at the stat sheet and say, this guy isn't stuff in the stat sheet. What, he's just a D lineman. But what I want you to realize is the Chicago Bears run a gap-style defense, right? Their scheme is based on gaps. This has this gap. This guy has this gap. Everybody has a gap. Andrew Billings was one of the guys you could count on to have his gap, but he's a guy that has a gap and a half. So he's a plus. He's playing unbelievable football. He's a guy that takes away a gap and a half, sometimes two. He's that big. He's that physical. You watch him I love watching him on film. Just his demeanor, the way his mannerisms. He's just mean, big, takes up space, and he keeps off of our linebackers, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. The guys we like to see run around and make those plays. He keeps blockers off of them. Without him in there, the veteran presence, guy that's been playing so well, and he's honestly been doing pretty well under the radar in pass rush for an interior lineman that's not actually getting the sacks. He's actually providing some pressure and winning. So it's going to be hard. Zach Pickens is going to have to step up, and so is Gervon Dexter. They're going to have to be ultra productive, and that's what you want for a second and third round pick. And, hopefully those two guys can pick up the slack. And it's unfortunate because Big Bill was having such a good year, and what he means to the guys in the locker room. And a guy like that, it is deflating when you're running through the tunnel and you're used to this leader, a guy that's been there, and you see him next to you, and he's going out in the tunnel with you. It is something that you lose. It's a veteran presence. I know he's not the most outspoken guy, but he was a guy that was there that led by example. So these defenders, there's going to have to be somebody that picks it up in leadership, and also that defensive line, defensive front. DeMarcus Walker is a guy that plays a ton of different positions. He doesn't play nose tackle, but he moves around. He can play a 5, a 9 tech, a 5 tech. He can do a lot of different. Maybe a guy like him even step up. Chris Williams, Darrell Taylor, I think, is returning this week. Is getting some little limited practice, but so these guys in the defensive line are going to have to step up, and also Eric Washington, scheme-wise. You're not going to be able to run the same things you do. Obviously, Eberflus calling the plays. Eric Washington is a defensive line professional. He's going to have to figure out some new stunts, some new alignments, because you don't have a guy that's going to take away that gap and a half like you're used to.
Yeah. I think when you look at this defense, and obviously the secondary has been really banged up too, looks like Kyler Gordon may be trending towards returning this week. He was limited in practice, so Matty Eberflus sounded optimistic about that. Brisker's still out, Clay. That's and Matty Eberflus said that he's unlikely going to be ready this week. I mean, at this point, he's been out since October 6th. I mean, at this point, you're just worried for the guy's health long term. I mean, man, it's just scary and it's disappointing, and I hope he's doing okay.
To me, the biggest indictment on this concussion issue is the fact that on a Wednesday, several weeks after the concussion happened, on a Wednesday, so it's been a month almost. Is this today a month?
Yeah, it's been a month.
It's been a month. Yeah. And I just had a friend pop in to see, what we're doing over here. But it's been a month. And to be able to say on a Wednesday that this guy isn't going to play in the game from his concussion after he's been out so long, that to me, that means very serious, and he's probably not close to coming back. Because typically a coach will say, yeah, we'll see how the week progresses. He's in concussion protocol. There's a chance something turns around and, we see where he's at. But to know right now and to say, yeah, he's in the same situation as last week, he's probably not going to play, and knowing his concussion history and to know that he went from sitting out a couple weeks, the first and second time that he got a concussion, to now he's at a month and he's not even thinking about coming back yet, is very worrisome. Obviously, to Bears fans, you're missing a player, a hard hitter, a guy that's one of those enforcers on your defense. But mostly for him as a person and a player, obviously your health comes first. And with NFL players, it's always this catch-22. You're going to have some head-to-head contact, and the NFL has done a good job of eliminating it where they can. But you're always going to have that. But him as a player, to see if he can continue to play this game, if you're missing this much time, it's one of those decisions you have to make, and you really have the pluses and with your family and really figure out where to go from here. And I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but just to me, everything coming out, just all encompassing, looking at it, I think that's the direction it might be heading. So hopefully hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Yeah. I do want to touch on, before we go, Clay, I think we have to talk about the way Caleb Williams is playing. Missing open guys, his accuracy is off. He's not taking the easy check down, maybe trying to do a little too much. How does one rein it in, right? It almost feels like you need to take a little bit off his plate to me and say, Caleb, here's your menu of options, right? And this is on everyone, right? This is on Shane Waldron. It's on Matt Eberflus. It's on his teammates. It's on everyone knowing their jobs and doing their assignment and helping the young quarterback. Clay, how do you see kind of trying to solve some of these issues that Caleb Williams is having right now?
Yeah, Ruthie, from my perspective, and obviously I'm not an offensive coordinator or head coach. I've played in a lot of different systems, and I've played with a number of young quarterbacks as well. And what I would do, watching this team, knowing this team, and from my experience in football, is figure out what he does well. And I think we know one thing he does well that they started to do last week, and for some reason they got away from it, and that's the hurry up, the muddle huddle, hurry up, whatever you want, whatever pace you want to go at, don't huddle. Stay out there on the field. We can see it. They can see it. He is comfortable in that style of offense. And I know you're in an away game. So what the coaches are thinking, we're not going to be able to get the calls out because it's going to be loud. And so we're not going to do a lot of no huddle this week. Look at who showed up to the game in Arizona, Ruthie. That was a Chicago Bears home game that they traveled to. I mean, they had more fans there than the Cardinals did. You should have been living in that muddle huddle, hurry up all game, because that's what Caleb likes. I have an inclination they'll come out and they'll major in that again this week. But that's definitely something they'll do. And you said it. Drink that menu. Some of the best restaurants, Ruthie, they don't have the 4 or the 5-page menu. Cheesecake Factory, 10-page menu. Thank you. Give me one page. Give me a one-page menu. That's all you need. Just some classics that you love. Taste great. This is what we love. We do these dishes very well. We do these plays very well. And Caleb, get very comfortable with all the different looks you're going to see on this shorter menu. It's like you go to a nice restaurant, small menu. They do those dishes so well, though. You're not going to miss. You don't have to worry about picking some random dish that just happened to be one of their worst dishes, because you need to do everything right. So that was a very good point, and I've seen that work with young quarterbacks before. I've seen that when Blake Bortles improved his play to become successful. I saw it when I was talking about Jacoby Brissett stepped into play. We go in a game with Tom Brady, we would have 100 just got to know calls. You say a word, you say charter. You got to know the formation. You got to know the snap count. You got to know the check. You got to know everything. You got to know it now. Jacoby Brissett, we got 5. We still won the game. Okay, know who your quarterback is, know what he does well, and put him in a position to win. And that is what the Bears got to do with Caleb Williams. He's not as comfortable looking at the film. And first of all, some of these schemes to me look very interesting that Shane Waldron's running. I don't know if the players are running them wrong, but you'll see 4 players in one side of the field in one specific spot. You'll see 3 over. It doesn't mirror up to typical NFL progressions. And everybody knows how progressions and levels are supposed to work in NFL. It's a complicated game that is simple. There's certain things that always look the same. There's different ways to get there, but you get there. And I'm not seeing a lot of that in Shane Waldron's offense. But also, Caleb does got to be better about getting the ball out quicker, be more accurate, and there was a few drops last week. So all-encompassing, I know I said a lot, but I say all that to say this. If you fix those things, I think Caleb Williams is obviously still the guy. Hearing a lot of noise out there. He's 22. He's going to continue to grow and get more comfortable, and I think this should be a big week for him back at home at Soldier Field.
Yeah. I mean, if the pressure's ever been on, it's on, right? I mean, you go 3 and out at Soldier Field this weekend, first drive. Oh, baby, the Boo Birds are going to be out, and they're going to be out early. And I think you got to start fast. And I know that it feels like we say that every single week, but
10 points in the first quarter, Ruthie. 10 points all year in the fourth quarter.
Not good. Simply not good. And this is not a good football team that's coming here this weekend. And if you can't, everyone knocks on the Bears like, oh, you only beat bad teams. You only beat bad quarterbacks. Well, guess what? This is a bad team and a bad quarterback, and you better beat up on them too. That's all I got to say, Clay.
Yeah. And you brought up the last thing I want to touch on is you brought up the start fast. You are not lying, girl. We need the Bears to start fast. They have scored 10 points in the first quarter in 8 games. What combined? Yeah, what is going on? A script, get the script. You need a whole screenplay. I don't care what you're doing over here. The script, don't script. You got to be able to start when you're ahead of the chains and ahead of the game. It changes the tempo for you. It changes the call. It changes the pressure, and it changes the game. Playing from ahead is so much better than playing from behind. If we're talking the chains, if we're talking the scoreboard, please start fast this week.
And you can run the ball when you start with the lead, right? Like you can stick with the run, you can establish the run, you can stick with it. And it takes a lot of pressure off of a game plan and the game strategy and just the way that you manage the game. Everything is easier when you play with the lead. And that's something that I think is when you talk about this first 15 and you got to have this menu of plays that you like in the first quarter, like where is that? Like clearly you're picking the wrong plays because they're not working. And also it's okay to kick a field goal. Like I think that we kind of lose that sometimes too. It's like you don't have to score a touchdown, but you got to get points on the board on that first drive. And if they can do that in this game, I think it's a recipe for success. Vibes are high, fans are happy, and here we go. Beat the Patriots before you got to play Green Bay the next week.
And it's also okay, and obviously I'm a little biased here, but it's also okay to get your tight end the football. Okay, and I know we've talked about this before.
We didn't even talk about it. Yeah.
Cole Kmet is 1 target in the last 2 games, had 0 targets last game. If you don't come out the first play and just throw Cole Kmet a flat route, I don't care. You put Doug Kramer in the backfield. If you have to put Cole Kmet in the backfield and hand him the football, get my guy the football. But realistically, he is a top whatever you want to say. I call him a top 10 tight end. I think he is. I had him in my list earlier in the season as a top 5 tight end so far this year. He was playing that good. And for him to just completely disappear, I know it was just Halloween, but he was dressed up as a ghost, as our guy said on 6-7 The Score. I stole that from the Mullion Hall show. But he was dressed up as a ghost because they couldn't see the guy. 1 target in the last 2 weeks. That's just unacceptable for Cole Kmet, a guy of his skill set, his size, his speed, his catching ability, that has caught 27 of 30 targets on the season. that has 128 pass rating when targeted, why go away from that guy? Keep feeding him, give him more targets, not less.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's all the best coaches, all the best, athletes that I've been around. You want your best players to have the ball in their hands when you need to score, when you need to win. You want the best players. Cole Kmet is by far and away one of the best players on this football team. He needs to be involved. Man, just imagine Soldier Field right now, Clay. First quarter, touchdown to Cole Kmet, corner of the end zone, one-handed grab, Caleb and Cole, game over. I mean, you can just see it. It would be electric. And so I think you want to see that happen. You want to see a lot of progress on Sunday. The New England Patriots coming to town. We're going to preview this matchup a little bit deeper on our Friday episode of The Charter, but great to recap this one with you, Clay Harbor. We got to go do our show on Chicago Sports Network. We got to go do our Big Pro Football show. Make sure you catch Clay Harbor, Ruthie Polinsky, David Haw, and a bunch of other guests throughout the course of the week on the Big Pro Football Show on Chicago Sports Network at 5:30 every day, Monday through Friday. Clay Harbor, thanks so much for joining me on this edition of The Charter, and we'll see you on Chicago Sports Network, everyone. Have a great night.